Hey, Road Warriors and Care Crew. Welcome to the Care in Motion podcast, the new home for the home health clinician. We're going to talk through stories and tips around safety, efficiency, clinical issues, and career pathways, all from the perspective of a few road warriors just like yourself to provide their insight. Our goal here is that you'll find this weekly podcast helpful, relatable, and interesting, but most importantly, wildly entertaining during your daily drive. All right, welcome to the Care in Motion initial kickoff podcast. So very excited to get things started. My name is Dan. I'm one of the two Dans here, and we're excited to get this group together. And on this very first podcast, we want to share a little bit about why we're here, who we are, what we're doing, what Care in Motion is, where we're heading, what we think, all the fun stuff. So to kick things off, I'll just introduce myself real quick. My name is Dan. I've been in the administrative side of a large therapy outsourcing company for home health, going on almost 4 years now, and have had the pleasure and honor and privilege to work with a lot of therapists across the country, PT, OT, and speech. And in my position, which is non-clinical, I've had a great opportunity to learn from administrators of agencies across the country of all sizes and get all kinds of different perspectives. And I've also been able to meet a lot of our therapy team across the country, spend a lot of time learning about a life in a day and week as a home health therapist. And across those travels, I've been able to meet some amazing people who have gathered here today as part of our kickoff podcast. And I'd love to take a minute to do some introduction. So maybe I'll turn it over to you, Lisa.
Oh, perfect. Okay. My name's Lisa. I have been a PT for just over 10 years now. I've been in home health for the last 7. I have 2 kiddos. They're in elementary school, so they definitely keep me busy as well as being full-time. I'm also a former military spouse. My husband actually just retired, but that's kind of what initially drew me into home health, of the flexibility, because I had to play single mom for long periods of time. So it definitely helped kind of steer me in the home health direction. And then I also currently run the Instagram account for Home Health Chronicles. So some people may know me from there. And I'm just happy to be joining the Care in Motion team and launching this podcast.
Yes, we're excited to have you. And Brendan.
My name is Brendan. I've been a PT since 2016. I've worked in a few different settings, but home health has definitely been the longest. I worked for a few different agencies as well. I've worked on both sides, a little bit of administrative and also as a clinician. I love both, but just like everything else, there's just pros and cons, and I'm excited to get together with these amazing individuals here.
And wrapping it up, Dan.
Yes, sir. So, I'm Dan Catuccio. I've been a PT 21 years. My wife and I traveled as PTs out of college all over the country, had a blast, settled, had 3 beautiful girls. And probably 15 years in, I felt kind of called to do something else, not just PT. And so I kind of started a side business as a wedding pianist. I'm also a content creator. Some of you might know me from there for Facebook and Instagram. Just launched my first course for home health. So I'm 19 years in home health, but basically teaching how to become the most lean, mean, efficient home care warrior machine. Check it out.
I love it.
You get a chance.
You can't see it if you're listening, but it's a mug that says, what did it say? Home care warrior?
Home care warrior.
Care warriors.
I love it.
So happy to be here.
Well, happy to have you here. Happy for all of us to be together. And I think what's interesting is that we all came together because of a vision of bringing together sort of the community of home health therapists across the country. And I know originally this started months ago, almost over a year ago, thinking about what a life is like, and when you're sort of out on your own. And I know Brendan and I had originally chatted about this because having worked together in different capacities and seeing 10 to 15 new therapists coming on board every week, where we were at, and seeing them in different phases of their careers. Some were new to home health, some had been veterans like yourselves, and they all kind of came and had some of the same thoughts and questions, and were living the same lives. And we were talking about some of the different communities that are available on social media. And as we looked through it, we realized that it was almost like Groundhog Day, every week, of asking some of the same questions and wondering, for the same best practices, and what's the best, equipment to use, and what are some tips for this, and who's getting paid that. And it really made us realize that there's not something out there that really reaches out into that community and brings everybody together. Hence the opportunity for Care in Motion. So I know, after talking with you, Lisa and Dan, you guys had kind of experienced the same thing that Brendan and I had seen. Lisa, maybe share with everybody some of the thoughts that you've had out there.
Yeah, I mean, so in home health, we're really alone out there, right? Yes, we do have support from the office staff, and there's coworkers, but you're making your schedule, you're really doing everything yourself. You're with your patients by yourself, and there's not a lot of kind of camaraderie that you feel, I think, in home health than you do in different settings, because you're not around people all the time, right? And there's not a lot of resources. You have trainings, but I really didn't find there's kind of a place to go, right? So I think in what we're doing right now and bringing Care in Motion together is to build this community for resources and exercise programs and just support for the home health clinicians out there, so that there is this kind of unified place that we can have, because there really isn't a lot out there. So even podcasts, there's really nothing out there that's geared specifically toward clinicians. So I'm excited to try and bring that to everybody with Care in Motion.
And I know, Dan, you talked about once, maybe the loneliness, the difference between an introvert and an extrovert, but even for the most introverted of folks, sometimes it gets lonely out there.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't even know what I would qualify myself as, honestly. I think there's days where I'm an introvert, days that I'm an extrovert. But I began home care, and I've sustained my job in home care for this long because there are so many beautiful perks. And those of you who have done it for a while can really see the good fruit that comes with home. The flexibility. I've gotten my kids on the bus every day since they went to school. That's just kind of unheard of. I've been to all their sporting events. Plus, in the actual setting of home care, I love working with my patients one-on-one in the environment that they're most comfortable, their home, and helping them navigate, trying to figure out how to make life easier. I love that. But yeah, you get back in your car, and there's some days where I'm like, oh, silence. I love this, right? And I'll be driving for days without the radio on, and I'm like, whoa. And then there's other days where I'm like, oh, I'm kind of lonely. I'm eating my lunch, like trying to have a conversation with no one, and texting like my work friend, and it's like, yeah. So the fact that you started this community here, Care in Motion, is really special. It's like a one-stop shop where people can come to experience just that community and ask the questions and bounce different ideas off of each other. A little bit different than the social media groups. So,
just out of curiosity, thinking about the different places that you guys have worked, and the different agencies, and where you've been. Like, has there ever been, what's the closest you've seen and come to a community? Or has it always sort of been you're on your own?
So, I don't know I'll just answer quick. I think back in the day, we used to have a lot more like in-person meetings. Sometimes at one company I was with, it was a small kind of intimate company. Right now I'm with a huge company, but we would meet every week for like interdisciplinary meetings and this and that. So you'd see people, and it was kind of special. We wouldn't meet up for lunch or anything like that, I think that now that we have the technology as we do, I mean, there are people, like I think Lisa was mentioning this on one of our conversations. There are some people that have been hired in the past 3-4 years that I don't know that I would even recognize them because we just don't see them, and that's really bizarre, you know. And our patients will say, "Oh, you know this person, right?" I'm like, "No, I literally don't." Like, but you know, I've texted with them, and so yeah, they seem nice, you know.
Yeah, I just it's just crazy to think about like an entire industry of people that are out there that are working together side by side, but you know maybe wouldn't even have recognized each other because it's just not you're not together like that. You never have been really. It's just not part of the job. Brendan, any perspectives on you know from your experience working at multiple different places and seeing it from a few different angles on you know how you know why is there a need for this and what kinds of things do you think that you know we can bring to help pull people together?
I think the other two have kind of really spoke to it, but it's about being the best clinician at what you do, having that work-life balance, being able to really capitalize on being a really great physical therapist, but then also being there and being present for your family, and then also not being afraid to have somewhere where you can ask questions where you don't think there's going to be a negative impact if you ask this question or that question, and really just having a free and open community that you can really get a benefit from. And the other thing is like Lisa mentioned about different home exercise programs or things along that nature. It can really help start a growth mindset and really push you forward and that get your creative juices flowing to be like, hey, I can do something like that too. So
Yeah, I've seen a lot, you know, of interaction out in social media with people asking a lot of questions, like we talked about at the beginning. You know, what do you think about this pay rate, or how many points for you know this visit, or you know, do you have any suggestions for this? Where do you go right now? Um, just to get just general types of resources. Do you guys is it common? I mean, is there a support for that type of stuff?
I mean,
So
I get a lot of questions that people ask me on my Instagram and try and pull stuff together. But for me personally, I'll go to like the Facebook group or my coworkers. There's not really a place that has everything together and streamlined, right? It's kind of most things that I found is scattered, right? It's nothing is very concise.
Yeah, I know Dan, you were about to say something too.
oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, yeah, I mean, you go to the social media groups, and you kind of pick people's brains about, you know, some people take polls. I know I did recently, just kind of getting a consensus, you know, what are people's productivity expectations like for PTAs and CODAs versus PTs and nurses and stuff, you know, because, and what are your visits weighted, you know, or how are they weighted, you know, compared to each other? Is a start of care different than a evaluation, which is different than a routine visit? I should hope so, because they all take very different time. So, I mean, just getting a feelers out there because it is different. And some of the answers that I've heard are, I would say, interesting and a bit surprising, you know? So kind of gets you getting a feel for what's out there and measuring up to, you know, your company. So
Yeah, it's crazy to see the difference in like the range. You know what I mean? Like one person, like this is, you know, well, this is worth this, and another person's like, oh, I would never. You know, that's absolutely crazy. And so it's been fascinating to me, you know, as someone, you know, having come from outside, you know, over the last few years, to see everyone across the country doing essentially the same thing, but in so many different ways in which it's sort of like administered. I don't know how many industries are like that, especially given the fact that it's a distributed workforce that's like out. You know, not a lot of like consolidated best practices.
mhm.
Um, you know, some of the things that we've talked about, and I think this goes to where the vision is for Care in Motion and for what we want to, accomplish together and share and think about is what we call the pillars, right? And it comes down to some of the things that you've talked about, which is safety, safety in home health, efficiency, clinical aspects, and then career and compensation and things of that nature. So I thought we could talk just a little bit about why each of those little segments are special and why that's kind of where we originated some of the concepts from and have grouped together a lot of the content. And I know Lisa's, we've talked about safety a lot, and I know it's probably one of your passions, and you had some thoughts on that. So I thought we'd start with safety.
Yeah, I mean, I think safety is going to be a huge pillar for us to touch on in future podcasts, right? Because there's so much that goes into the aspect of safety in the home, and a lot of things that you don't really think of, right? There's the environmental aspect, what's happening before you even get into the visit, right? Your surrounding areas. Then once you're entering the home, what should you be looking for, right? Are there animals that are, not put up? Is there a safety concern there? Who's in the home? Family members, right? What do you know about these people? You're entering somebody's environment, and we don't have a lot of information. And then you have your patient. What do you know about them? Are they safe? Are there guns in the home? Right? So I really think safety is going to be something that we'll touch on in future podcasts, because there's so many different aspects of it. And like I said before, we're out there and we're alone, right? So something happens to you in, a nursing home, you have staff surrounded, right? There's people everywhere. There's somebody for an immediate response. In the home, you're out there by yourself, and a lot of times people don't know where you are, right? Yeah, our tablets track us, but who's able to log into that? How long will it take for someone to know that there's an issue, right? So what safety precautions do you have in place? So I think this is a really good and important pillar that we'll touch on in Care in Motion in future podcasts. And yeah, I think it's really important.
What kind of things have the different places that you've worked at, like what kinds of things have they done to help arm you with, what you would need to know to feel safe when you're on your own?
I mean, we do training every year, and that's kind of required, but a lot of times, in full honesty, I just kind of click through them, and I'm not really paying attention as much as I should. A lot of the stuff I've learned is either reaching out to people in the community or coworkers, but there's not a really good place to go to really discuss, I think, all of the topics or even things that you should have on your person, right? Got people that carry pepper spray, or they carry a taser, or there's certain buttons out there that you can press that let someone know, like, hey, I'm in a questionable spot. If you don't hear from me, or if I now press this button, and activates an emergency response system. I've heard of people having buddy systems, but my biggest thing is, if you feel unsafe, you just remove yourself immediately. Your life is not worth, they'll replace you.
I had joined one of our therapists on a visit once, and I remember as we were walking up the stairs to get, to the bedroom upstairs, there was a sign on one of the doors that said, "Do not open door, beware of dog." It was like one of the bedroom doors. And I obviously I didn't open the door, but this thing sounded like it was Cujo behind this like flimsy door. And I'm just like, should we leave now? Which is, I just imagine, like a typical Tuesday in your life.
Yeah.
I was doing home care in California, and I knocked on the door first time, and I walk in, and it sounded like a pony coming around the corner. It sounded like a horse. And I look over, and there's a dog that was up to my like chest almost. And It was one of the, what are they, with the biggest dogs? Like mastiffs? I mean, it was whatever the biggest, yeah. And the owner was like, "Oh, don't be bothered by Tiny. That's just Tiny." I'm like, "Oh, hi, Tiny. It looks like you're about to break both my radius and ulna, like at this moment." Like it was.
They don't bite.
Yeah, they're fine.
Oh, well, I know the one that you're passionate about, Dan, and you mentioned it before, sort of like some of the courses in, lean, mean, efficient operating machine. But it's just efficiency, including work-life balance, so that you can get to the bus stop. What are some of your thoughts when it comes to efficiency as sort of a pillar?
Yeah, well, I think it's huge. I think it's huge because I think it's a big struggling point, honestly, for a lot of clinicians, whether it be therapists or nurses or, any of the above. I think that, I feel like because we love and care for these patients that we go to see, sometimes we have this like innate, uh, perfectionist mentality of like, I want to do everything I can feasibly possible for you, and I want to do it all and solve all your problems right now in one day. You know what I mean? And I think that's a big learning point for me as I've gotten older is, this there's no reason I should be in this routine visit for 65 minutes. And so long story short, I have found tons of strategies of how to really, make my visits lean, productive, make every minute count. I'm talking within the first 5 minutes, I'm in standing position. I'm already taking their vitals while catching up on their weekend, all at the same time, making every minute count. And I think, and documenting in between repetitions. And by the time I leave a visit, oftentimes I'm either done with the documentation or I have 2 more minutes to document and I'm done. And I go to my next patient with that paperwork done. That's been my style for many, many years. And it's one of those things where, I'm able to do it all in like a 40-minute visit or so. And I think that it's just, there's a lot of strategies and tips that can be takeaways for sure that people can try. There's hard habits to break. Seasoned therapists, seasoned clinicians who they just have a hard time getting out in 55 minutes. My wife, the sweetest woman on earth, used to have a hard time getting out of people's houses because she'd have a hard time saying, "See, listen, I have to cut you off." So there's an art to, you got to get creative about how you do this job because you are on a schedule, and ultimately it does make a difference if you're seeing people for 55 minutes versus 40 minutes. It's an extra hour and a half in the day if you're seeing 6 patients. Do the math. I mean, we're talking crazy stuff here. And you can get a heck of a lot done and a great treatment done in 40 minutes, no doubt.
You don't sound like one of the folks that I have agencies call me about that, hey, we're missing, we've got documentation that's 7 days past due. And I'm thinking that you're probably not taking a whole lot home and putting them in that stuff.
Always done the day of, my friend. And this is one of those things where I listen. If you're listening in and you're saying that's a struggling point, I hear you. I totally hear you because I know that it's a struggling point. But I'm certain there are things that you can do, like starting now, implementing now, that can help get you feeling better about it. No doubt.
Well, and I know next week's, the next podcast is going to be efficiency. So we get to hear a little bit more about thoughts on that.
Yes.
Brendan, you're passionate. Not everyone is, obviously, but I know, the clinical aspect of the position when it comes to safety, efficiency, and clinical and career. I know clinical is kind of where you've always trended towards. What are your thoughts on, clinical as a pillar and why, and what we need to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think, across any profession, you want to be the best at what you do, right? You want to be the top tier. And I think as home health clinicians, as physical therapists, I think a lot of us are type A people. We want to be lifelong learners. We want to have the best practices. We want to know the latest trends. We want to know, other exercises or things that we can use. I mean, I would love to just see what somebody else is thinking about, and I use it in the next day for one of my patients. Like, I mean, that's like the best kind of compliment, I think, as a clinician that you can get. but it also gets you thinking and rewiring it. And I think, to ever challenge that as far as to be that lifelong learner and to keep, trying to be the best and learning the best practices and learning, even specific, CEUs or courses to help better myself as a specific home health clinician, I think is huge for me to be the best possible clinician. But like Dan said, it helps me be more efficient because I know exactly what I want to do. It helps me do those other things for, like Lisa said, it helps me be safe because I know what's safe for the patient, what's safe for me. Like there's so many things that play into it, but I think it's all connected there. So,
yeah. Well, and I think wrapping things up, and I felt like I had to contribute something, on top of all of the immense amount of experiences and background and perspectives that you guys bring. And, when it comes to, career, compensation, and just sort of like looking at what's out there. And, we talked already about, some of the, what are points, the point system, what are standard values worth, or what's the average? We talked about different compensation plans. Like I've seen people come from all kinds of different home health agencies with, a salary, what's a salary expectation? What about a hybrid salary plus, pay per visit after 20 points? There's different kinds of arrangements. We've seen different, pay per visit plans and, 1099s and full-time versus part-time, different fringe benefits and things that could be kind of expectations. And then just general career path, what are the options? What are the opportunities? When we talk to different administrators or folks in some of the larger organizations that have sort of progressed, throughout their career, wanted to get into the office and not necessarily treating anymore. What are some of the opportunities and options, and what types of suggestions are there to be able to make that jump out of the field, and things to consider and think about? And bringing on special guests, recruiters, what are they looking for? What kinds of questions would you be getting asked? What kind of expectations should you have going into it? So there's so many different, thoughts as I think about all of the different, therapists and clinicians, administrators, and Brendan, I know you made the jump from, therapist to business development. I've seen, other folks that I've worked with, go from home health therapist to hospice executive director, like just making these different jumps and what that looks like. So I think it'll be a lot of fun to kind of talk about what the opportunities are, what the best practices are, and how to turn challenges into opportunities, and how to really leverage your strengths to figure out, what's in it for you. So I'm excited to broach a lot of those topics with you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So who wants to bring it home? Who wants to close us down? Brendan, you got something?
I just think there's so much information out there, and I can't wait to bring it all together in different podcasts and having the website and everything to join this community together through the home health clinicians out there, because we want you to feel heard and supported.
Absolutely.
I feel like, you got 4 individuals here that bring a varied background, that have a lot of knowledge base and depth, that, feel the day-to-day struggles and problems that you've faced or we've faced and are facing, right? And I think we want to, 1, bring awareness to that, but 2, help you be the best you can be. And I think, Care in Motion is an open space to establish that and to really fine-tune, efficiency, safety, clinical excellence, career development, all those things that we really want to, learn about and know about, and continue to improve upon ourselves as individuals. And, I think a one-stop shop to have everything can really be impactful for many individuals, especially in the home health setting, that maybe sometimes is forgotten or pushed to the side by, schools, institutions, or other places, because it's kind of a scared environment, or a lonely environment, or things like that. I think this can be really impactful for many.
I love it. The one-stop shop. Well, until next week, thank you all for being together this evening, and thanks to everybody for listening. And next up will be efficiency. Talk to you guys soon.